Well, we're off to a great start, aren't we? One Punch Man fast became a darling among anybody who's seen it. It satirizes the story tropes, following an overpowered protagonist that actually manages to turn into a hilarious deconstruction of shonen anime as a whole, while also exploring a life without a sense of fulfillment, depression, and breaking out of a state of isolation to overcome that feeling by accepting the company of others. And it's also a visually stunning show. Produced by the beloved Madhouse Entertainment with Shingo Natsume, acclaimed director of Space Dandy, at the director's helm, with both professional and extremely dedicated web animators for some of their biggest scenes. Even with a budget no larger than any other anime of the same scope at roughly $200,000 per episode, the series was able to deliver dynamic angles, fast camera movement, astounding senses of scale, and a sense of force and power behind each of Saitama's titular one punches that it was impossible not to love. The second season was all but guaranteed. And it seems we may have gotten that wish granted by one of those asshole genies. When word got out about Season 2 of One Punch Man, fans weren't exactly thrilled to discover that it would be produced by a different studio known as JC Staff, a studio not well known for action, under a relatively inexperienced director, Chikari Sakurai. This wasn't due to the expected reason of attempting to cheap out and choose a less expensive studio, but rather something nobody could really work around.
Schedule conflict.
Despite all this, I personally tried to keep an open mind with things. JC Staff has a lot of well-received anime produced, and maybe that god-awful preview trailer was just using relatively unpolished animation or went to an inexperienced editor that was sacked for it. It's cute how naive I can be. Now, I'm not here to talk about the first episode. I can sum it up pretty quickly. Stiff action, characters are floaty, no major impacts are shown, and Dr. Kusuno apparently designed Genos to not need to move his jaw when he talks. Which almost makes sense. I mean, he could just have a speaker right there, but then why the lip movement? But honestly, it wasn't as bad as I was expecting. I mean, it's not quite reaching the nadirs of Dragon Ball Super or One Piece. Then again, nobody comes to these vids for any positivity, so let's cut right into the meat of the episode. What I'm here to talk about today is episode 2, in particular, the fight between Genos and Speed of Sound Sonic, and why this fight made me genuinely angry. Now, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, and I know that you will, Internet. But as far as I can tell, the redrawn One Punch Man manga done by Yusuke Murata is what the both Madhouse and JC staff used for storyboards for the animation development. And for good reason. There are many compilation GIFs using the panels essentially as keyframes showing how smooth and flowing the action from the manga alone can be. Because of that, I'm not only going to be breaking down and offering corrections where I can on the animation itself, but I'm going to be doing a comparison to the manga if appropriate. So with that, let's begin.
二度と現れないよう俺がこの場で消してやりますお前みたいなノロマに俺が消せるかその程度の実力でまだ俺と戦う気か俺がいつ実力を見せた貴様の負けだ
And I got a gripe immediately. Comparing this scene to the manga, Genos faces downward as he charges before looking up with the harsh shadows on his face along with the glowing eyes, adding much more menace to his earlier threat of erasing Sonic. That transition would have made so much more impact than this. This is where I gave up. The rapid punches at first seemed like a decent idea to me, but they defied the continuity in the next shot where instead of straight forward, Genos' punches are being swung wide and going in various directions. With the something blur effect, you can't even really see what he's doing, and the cramped space just betrays Sonic's dodge horribly. This of course followed by the rotation of the camera tells you that he's flipping, and if I had to guess, they actually got the rotation backwards because he goes from upside down to right side up between shots, then back to upside down. Whoops. And when he lands, thanks to the ugly blur and the close-up shots obscuring what should have been the scarf being torn off, we get a continuity error with his scarf just disappearing. To compare! In the manga, Sonic is given much more room in his dodge and you can see what happened to the scarf. Genos actually tore it off while he was striking him, and the last remnants are seen flying off between the flip and the landing. Not so much here. And after one of the better shots with slow-mo Genos mimicking that kick-ass dodge from the first season of the fight between him and Saitama, we get Genos firing a... fist laser? I don't know what it is, but apparently it managed to destroy the street behind them before he even fired it. Light faster than light, Dr. Kusuno really is a genius. In the manga, this was caused by a shockwave from Genos' punch destroying the nearby wall.
加速 俺と遊んだ時の全速力よりちょっと速くなってる。あれ？パーツ変えた？
全く見えない。
I guess it's easy to animate a still frame with a white background and count it as animation if you just add a colored silhouette. And another minor gripe, Blizzard's expression. Compare these two. Blizzard's manga expression indicates she's actually trying to watch this and she's struggling to view the fight, whereas the anime seems more... bored? Eyebrow placement goes a long way, and even a very slight change to the curve of one's mouth can significantly change an expression's meaning. More blurs to hide the weak dodge effects. And while they may make it difficult to distinguish, you can just about make out that apparently Sonic has eyes in the back of his head, since all but one he's not actually looking at Genos or trying to turn. And here we see a big gripe I have with Speed of Sound Sonic slash at Genos. This shot is fine in theory, but the gap between the sword slash and Genos reappearing behind Sonic adds an unnecessary halt to the action. You can take the gap out and bam, it's much faster. See? And again, the expressions game. Sonic's face in the manga expresses much more frustration and growing anger that he's not able to hit Genos, whereas in the anime it's more Ugh.
なぜわざわざ後ろに回る？このガキ、俺より速いつもりか。頭の糸くずを取ってやったぞ。
More expression issues. The zoom happens too soon here, and it doesn't allow for the growing veins of rage to show for Sonic. But half the face is easier to animate, right? Really? That's how you do this? That's literally fading between 4 layers of the cell while shaking the camera. That's not even any lip movement. If you wanted to match the manga, grit his teeth, prove that Genos only talks with a speaker and doesn't actually need to move his mouth to talk. That is weak!
情けないやつ、死ね、三千山。動きが見えない。ならばここら一体を消し飛ばす。焼却砲、最大出力。決まる。
And the skimping of the fight comes to a close with an anticlimax, and not the fun kind like we're used to. Not only is this ending boring on the animation front, but it skips one of the most important parts of the finale with the buildup of Genos' final attack for a fade to white! Choosing this weak angle and also managing to break the 180-degree rule that would have been kept fine if they just followed the manga panels. Said panels showed Genos just about to strike the ground as Sonic's after images lunge at him with their swords drawn, only to cut to Blizzard, then back to Genos smashing on the ground. The anticipation is built up, making us feel tension and fear for Genos as he's surrounded by this man we know is a capable killer, and the fault with this angle doesn't feel like a cheap cut. Plus, it means they added an extra background for nothing when they could have just kept it here. Oh wait, getting a proper background on the street would have probably been too difficult. Just use an overbloomed white with a faded copy of Sonic catching up to him. That's just as good, right? This takes away from one of the most important aspects of One Punch Man's battles, the betrayal of anticipation. Often when a character fights the big bad of the moment, a setup occurs where they appear to have a huge attack only for it to be cut off by reality kicking in or Saitama interrupting it. Genos' attempt at self-destructing in the second episode to simply have Miss Mosquito swatted away by Saitama, robbing Genos of the heroic sacrifice, Moomin Rider's big grandiose speech about why he's a hero and the cheers of the crowd pushing him to defeat the Sea King, only to be slammed around like a rag doll. Losing that tension-building moment just weakens the anticipation and makes the non-payoff less fun in the end. This fight was the point when I stopped holding out hope that we'd get quality near that of Madhouse from JC. Having watched episode 3, they seem to have put a little more effort into Gauro's fights, but it's still using the same issues as this. Ugly shaky cam blurs, blank backgrounds, and far less sense of weight, speed, and impact. If the season somehow picks up after this in time for the most visually spectacular moments of the series, then I'll be colored quite surprised.